Deputy Maureen O'Sullivan.
Yeah, I mean, there's absolutely no doubt that the continued acceleration in settlement building is having a really detrimental and negative effect on what's happening in the West Bank. And I think it's very much threatening all the talks about a two-state solution. Now, it was criticised by the EU foreign ministers back in May 2012, but it's still continuing. So I want to know, what are the direct negotiations or direct talks that are going on with the Israeli authorities on this matter of the settlements? Settlements first and then the settlement goods.
Thank you. Honestly.
The Foreign Affairs Council conclusions of May 2012, to which Ireland strongly contributed, were an important statement of EU policy on the Middle East conflict. They identified a range of critical and negative Israeli policies which needed to be changed. Many of these centred around the continuing expansion of settlements, which I have consistently identified as a central issue in the conflict. The Council's call for full application of existing EU legislation relating to products from settlements related primarily to the non-eligibility of settlement products for the lower tariffs applicable to goods from Israel. I would have been happy to see a stronger wording on this issue and have worked since then to increase EU pressure on the issue of settlements. Further discussion has centred on the issue of labelling of settlement goods to prevent them from being misleadingly labelled as coming from Israel. In February 2013, the EU High Representative committed to prepare EU guidelines on labelling of settlement products, an initiative which I had encouraged and strongly supported. These guidelines are in preparation, involving both the External Action Service and the European Commission. But there is a tacit acceptance by the Council that it would not be opportune to move to finalise them at this moment when direct negotiations between the parties are underway in the region. The objective of the negotiations is, of course, a comprehensive agreement which would resolve the issue of settlements and of settlement products in a much more definitive and satisfactory way. The EU also adopted guidelines in June 2013, making clear the non-eligibility of entities and settlements to benefit from EU research funding. Finally, I would state that, in my view, the EU needs to be stronger in following up on the issues identified in the May 2012 Council conclusions.
Deputy O'Sullivan.
And in the meantime, the settlements continue to be built. And regardless of the, leaving the legal argument and the moral argument about settlements aside, there's also a massive environmental impact of all these settlements. And I think it's only when you're there and you see them for yourself, the extent of them taking up of the land, the open spaces that were left available, the massive pressure on water, the difficulties for Palestinian people moving from one area to another. And, there's also a lot of disquiet and anger among ordinary Israeli people and Israeli NGOs about what is going on. They don't want to see further settlement building. So all of the policy statements and all the calls for are not having any effect. So that's the whole crux of the matter. If it continues like this, there's not going to be a state left for Palestine to be part of a two-state solution. There's that much encroachment.
Honest.
Well, the settlements shouldn't be continuing. There's no doubt about that. And you're right, Deputy, that if the settlements do continue, they will make the development of the two-state solution physically impossible. They will effectively sever the northern, the southern part of the West Bank. They're having a huge impact around Jerusalem, and Israel should stop settlement expansion, particularly in the context of the talks that are now underway. As far as the talks themselves are concerned, I think, first of all, it is to be welcomed that discussions are underway, and I compliment in particular Secretary of State John Kerry for the initiative which he took in that regard. He discussed that issue with European Union foreign ministers. He discussed it directly with me, and we support the work that is being done on those talks. Now, as far as the European Union position is concerned, I'm glad that in May 2012 a very strong position was adopted by the European Union, a stronger position than had been adopted previously. As you know, it was very difficult to get agreement at European Union level on this issue. I would like to see it followed through more strongly. That is something that I am seeking to have done at the European Union Foreign Affairs Council, and I will continue to do that.
Thank you. Deputy O'Sullivan.
Last points. I mean, you mentioned Jerusalem, but I think the other area that needs to be mentioned is the Jordan Valley and what's happening there with particular ethnic groups and the way in which they are just being physically removed from their land. And again, you know, when you're there and when you see it and you're looking at particular areas and Palestinian people just trying to hold on to a tiny bit of land and all this encroachment around, and I think it's very, very visible in Hebron and the issues that are occurring there for Palestinian people trying to being prevented from earning a living because of the netting situation and because of where the borders are actually physically situated. I mean, calling for and policies they're just not working and they're not having any effect at the moment, most unfortunately.
Coniston.
Well, this has been a long-standing issue. There has been a standoff for a very long period of time. I'm glad that discussions are underway, and I want to see those succeed. I think the European Union has a role in supporting the talks. I think it has a role into the future in its relationship both with Israel and with the Palestinian state. I think it needs to pursue more strongly the conclusions that were reached in May 2012. I think reaching those conclusions in May 2012 was significant because for a very long period of time I think there have been very divided opinion and divided loyalties, I think, within the European Union and among European Union member states in relation to the Israeli-Palestinian issue. So I think getting an agreed position, first of all, was significant, but it does now need to be followed through. And I think the best way of following that through is in the context of the talks that are now taking place.